Hello, folks. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. Let's do it. Over 25,000 people have now been killed in Gaza in Israel's special genocide operation. They have killed over 25,000 people. 70% of those are women and children. This is almost unheard of in modern warfare, to obliterate this many people in this short a time without giving a flying crap whether you're hitting innocent civilians or not. And in many cases, we've seen intentionally targeting innocent civilians. That's what's going on right now in Gaza. I am Lee Camp, your resident anti-Zionist Jew, as well as your resident most sensitive comedian in America. So thank you for joining me. Hope you're all doing well out there. If you're not one of the people fearing for their lives in Gaza, which I'm sure if you're watching this, you're not, because they've had their entire internet, electricity, any way to really contact the outside world has been cut off. Because if you're going to perpetrate a genocide, you want to try to stop people from seeing it. Now, unfortunately, this is perhaps the first genocide that has been live streamed to the entire world, because luckily many of these brave journalists who have been targeted heavily have been able to get around the efforts to stop information from getting out. But we already have 100-some journalists that Israel has killed. Of course, each one of those is a war crime, and Israel is intentionally assassinating journalists. But yet the information continues to get out, and it is horrific. But today, and in a slightly positive note, I will be talking about whether this is we're seeing a global revolution, or could be seeing a global revolution sparked off by this genocide being perpetrated by Israel. And you may say to yourself, well, what does that have to do with the rest of the world? And I'm going to get into that, and some great writing by some great journalists talking about that very issue. Could we witness a global revolution based on this horror show? Just a little more, and I'll also be getting later into American freedoms and how some of our last remaining freedoms have been stripped recently in the past few years, and I'll be detailing that. I'll be bringing the receipts on how freedoms have been stripped across America. But let's stick with Israel for the moment. This is Common Dreams article talking about how the Israeli bombing of Gaza ranks among the most devastating in history. In case you weren't sure about that, there really is no modern instance of something being done at this level in this speed. To read from some of the article, that's more than twice the number of civilians. So this is several days ago. They're talking about only 20,000 civilians killed, whereas now it's over 25,000, because this is from several days ago. But still, you'll get the point. That's more than twice the number of civilians and over 14 times as many children as Russian forces have killed in Ukraine since February 2022. The average in the Russian proxy war in Ukraine is one child killed a day. That's been the average, apparently, roughly that. In Gaza, it's hundreds of children killed a day. That's the difference. Thousands, continue from the article, thousands more Palestinians are missing and feared buried beneath the rubble of the hundreds of thousands of buildings destroyed or damaged by Israeli bombardment. And that is why you hear some people, despite the official number being 25,000 innocent people killed in Gaza, you'll hear some people say it is over 30,000. And that's because there are a lot of people missing that many believe are just under the rubble, and you won't find their body for a long time. But that's likely where they are. To continue from the article, the scale of Palestinian civilian deaths in such a short period of time appears to be the highest such civilian casualty rate in the 21st century. And you really, as I'm going to talk about, or maybe it's in this article, maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Let's see. Robert Pape, a U.S. military historian and University of Chicago professor, told the AP that Gaza is one of the most intense civilian punishment campaigns in history, and mass punishment on civilians is a war crime. So all of this is describing war crimes. By some measures, Israel's bombing of Gaza is surpassing the Allied terror bombing of German cities during World War II. You, of course, know about some of that, such as Dresden, which was not known, the firebombing of Dresden was not known as a particularly military zone. It didn't have a lot to do with the German military, but the Allied bombing campaign decided to just kill as many people as possible, as many Germans, and interrupt their supply lines, etc. And so they turned Dresden into just a giant flaming ball of death, and which of course was written about by Kurt Vonnegut because he was in a cellar, one of the few who survived that moment. But what was I talking about? But US and UK strikes obliterated about 40 to 50% of the urban areas of the 51 German cities bombed between 1942 and 1945. And that around 10% of all buildings in Germany were destroyed. In Gaza, approximately 1 in 3 buildings have been destroyed. In northern Gaza, over 2/3 of all buildings have been leveled. So I also, believe it or not, want to bring to you a short clip from CNN. And this actually is shocking on multiple levels. It's shocking because of what they're conveying, but it's shocking that it's coming through at CNN. And I think what this is the truth of this is so horrific. This genocide is so horrific. We're all watching it. We all know what's going on. There's very few. I think the people defending Israel's right to genocide, I think it's overrepresented online. I mean, I don't know about you. Maybe you can leave comments if you disagree. In my everyday life here in the United States, I encounter almost no one who is just like, yeah, just kill as many people as possible. There's almost no one, even people who have said, I support Israel their entire lives. Many of them, maybe most of them, are like, seems like a bit too much. This seems wrong. Not a fan. That is what I'm encountering. And so I think the people defending Israel's special genocide operation are overrepresented online. That was a side note. But so CNN is feeling, I think, the pressure of like, maybe we can't keep doing full on pro-Israel, pro-genocide propaganda. And so every once in a while, they do let some of these stories through. And so this is actually, believe it or not, it's not Jake Tapper speaking, but it is from a Jake Tapper episode, show, whatever, hour. But he is, Jake Tapper's a pro-genocide kind of maniac, neoliberal piece of garbage. However, he did, maybe his producers, maybe he didn't even know what he was about to air, but he did allow this segment on. So let's see a moment of this real quick.
Today, the Israeli military acknowledged that they rolled into a cemetery, took bodies out of graves as part of what they say is a search for Israeli hostages' remains. But as the Israeli military put out that statement, we were completing our investigation into the Israeli military's desecration of cemeteries.
Please hold. I'm now realizing that I highlighted the wrong tab, so you guys are seeing the wrong thing, even if you heard some of that. I don't know if you could hear it or not, but please wait. Okay, let's start over, and hopefully this works a little better this time. Oh, for the love of God.
The Israeli military acknowledged that they rolled into a cemetery, took bodies out of graves as part of what they say is a search for Israeli hostages' remains. But as the Israeli military put out that statement, we were completing our investigation into the Israeli military's desecration of cemeteries. And what we found is 16 cemeteries across Gaza damaged or destroyed. I do want to warn our viewers that they may find some of these images disturbing.
In Gaza, even the dead cannot escape the indignities of war. More than a dozen cemeteries like this one in Jabalia, desecrated by the Israeli military. Gravestones destroyed, soil upturned, tread marks leaving little left for the living to honor their dead.
Okay, so and you can imagine what the rest of the segment is. It is detailing the IDF's desecration, destruction of cemeteries across Gaza. And a few things here. It's amazing it's being carried on CNN. But beyond that, you wonder why. Why would Israel? Yes, Israel clearly wants to kill as many Gazans as they can. Why would the IDF go after cemeteries? Now they're trying to claim, the IDF has put out a statement saying it's to look for the bodies of hostages, which is the dumbest excuse I've ever heard. First of all, we know the IDF in Israel doesn't give a shite about hostages because they're killing their own hostages. They killed them on October 7th. They've killed them with bombs since. They are not trying to make a deal with Hamas to get them. The idea there find these hostages is just so breathtakingly stupid as an excuse. But so beyond just that, if you saw the clips of what, believe it or not, CNN was showing, it was tank tire tracks ripping up cemeteries, knocking over headstones and everything else. Well, that is clearly not a search for bodies in the cemetery. A search for bodies in the cemetery would clearly be digging and trying to find where these bodies are. So obviously, what they're saying is lies. It is a goal of theirs to destroy Gazan cemeteries. Now, so now that we know that, why? What purpose does that serve? Well, when you commit a genocide, you try and destroy everything that culturally and spiritually connects people to the land. They're trying to kill and remove everyone from that land. Well, if you kill and remove so many from that land, the ones who were removed, if they have a spiritual or a cultural reason that they want to be in that place, they will keep coming back and they will keep talking about it. And, you know, as we saw with Native Americans as they were being genocided, they tried to get back to their spiritual places and their spiritual areas and things like that. But as with Native Americans, Israel is, as the U.S. did to Native Americans, Israel is trying to destroy every last remnant of both cultural, spiritual life that exists for Palestinians, for Gazans. Whether you're a religious person who believes that cemeteries and bodies after someone's dead have a lot of import, or whether you're not and you think, you know, once you're gone, doesn't really matter what people write on a piece of stone up on the ground. Whether you believe either way, you can understand that this is an effort by Israel to destroy the entire cultural and spiritual culture and every other tradition of the Gazan people, to really and purely separate them from that land and not give them any reason to connect to it. The ones that survive. Now, many, of course, we know 25,000 so far, but I'm sure by the time this is over, I wouldn't at all be shocked if it's over 100,000 once disease hits and everything else. But for the ones that survive, Israel's trying to make sure there's no reason for them to want to go back. But that is the only reason you would destroy cemeteries like that. And they've also bombed mosques, they bombed the third oldest church, I believe, in the world, which was located in Gaza. A church, not a mosque. And they're trying to kill every cultural memory that Gazans have. And this is what you are if you're a genocidal maniac, which unfortunately most of Israeli society is now signing up to be a part of that. Obviously sick, obviously disgusting. And yes, in a few moments, I promise you, I'm going to bring you some hopeful ideas on this being the beginning of a global revolution that could go far beyond this horror show. But I want to bring you one more thing before we get to that, which is a very interesting article by Lisa Savage about to try and put things in perspective for people, because it is tough to understand what's going on there because it is so far away. But for most people, but in terms of size and everything, what if Gaza were Maine, the state of Maine? Now, I don't know why she picked Maine, probably because she lives there, but who knows? But anyway, I think this is a fascinating, some fascinating stats if you were to compare Gaza to the state of Maine. it would take, so Gaza is 6 to 7 miles wide and only 25 miles long. The entire, now you take, so for it to be like Gaza, you'd take the entire population of Maine and you'd force them into this tiny little area, far smaller than the entirety of Maine. You'd force them all into this tiny little area, but then you double that population because the population of Gaza is double the population of Maine. Now add in the entire population of Boston, she says. So it's actually more than that. Half, and make sure half of all those people are children. Okay, so you have all these people crammed into this tiny, tiny area, and half of them are children. You fortify the border all around the area, land, sea, and air, block or control all border passings, turn off the electricity, turn off the water, then bomb them day and night for 100+ days, allow in little to no medical aid or food, force 90% of all those people to leave their homes until over half of the population is forced into the southernmost corner of that tiny area with nowhere else to go. Destroy or damage over 70% of all buildings, kill nearly 250 people a day, starve the survivors, attack with tanks, drones, snipers, aircraft, and every other available implement of modern warfare, destroy all the hospitals, bomb churches and schools, and make sure there is no safe place to exist. And then tell them, many of them, here is a safe place you can go to, move here to be safe, and then bomb that place as well. And that would be if Gaza were in the state of Maine. And imagine the U.S. government, modern day allowing that. I'm not saying the U.S. government wasn't involved in genocide in the past, but imagine modern day inside the United States, just that being allowed and encouraged. Oh yeah, all those people jammed onto that tiny little area and now bomb the living shit out of them for just days and days and days and days and cut off their food and water. And we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, it is horrific on so many levels. Okay, but let's get to kind of a hopeful note. This is the idea that we may be seeing an awakening of a global revolution due to this genocide. By the way, everyone, please click, I haven't said this yet, click thumbs up, click share, leave a comment. All that helps the algorithm. And please make sure you become it doesn't cost anything to hit subscribe or follow on YouTube or Rumble. And make sure you click the bell icon next to it when you hit follow. I've just gotten over 70,000 followers on Rumble. Can't thank you enough for that, for being a part of the growth of this channel, despite the immense censorship and suppression I'm facing, including just a couple of weeks ago, my TikTok also being banned with no warning and no appeals process. And also I'm over 50,000 on YouTube, which is my new YouTube channel after the old one of 250,000 was banned around the globe. So thank you all for doing that. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Omar, for the donation. Okay, there's a beautiful article written in Mondoweiss that is by Nyla Burton. It's called Palestine Awakens the Revolution. And she just, much of it is just, I don't know, really, really touched me and really powerful. I mean, when we're sitting here looking at this genocide, looking at this mass destruction, you need these moments where you feel your humanity and you don't just throw up your arms and say, I gotta focus on watching the Real Housewives of Orange County or whichever one airs nowadays. And I just need to focus on that and never look away. Because if I look away, I might hear about what's going on in Gaza. That's not the best. I'm not saying you can't do that for a little bit, but that's not the best way to deal with this. This article is probably a better way to think about things. So it begins when Patrice Lumumba was assassinated by our CIA. Hey now. And that, by the way, we just saw the anniversary of that, of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. Thank you, CIA. In 1961, Langston Hughes wrote, "They buried Lumumba in an unmarked grave, but he needs no marker. My heart's his grave, and it's marked there," unquote. Since Israel began its slaughter in Gaza on October 7th, I have felt my own heart become a grave for over 25,000 people in Palestine. I, along with the rest of the world, have borne witness to the world's most documented genocide in history. I have watched from my phone the attempted annihilation of the entire nation. And I can't stress that enough. That is the difference between this genocide and the so many that have come before. This one is fully documented, fully live streamed. You could turn it on right now and go watch it 24/7. And that was not the case throughout history. There have been truly horrific, disgusting, repulsive genocides through time, but none of them have been live streamed on your phones the way this one has. It is just a completely different thing in that regard. You cannot look away. It was easy to look away in the past. You go back 50, 100 years, you could go, did you hear that? I didn't hear that. No, they killed 1 million. That photo that doesn't look right. That it's black and white. Who knows? I bet you there was actually color there, and yet it's black and white. See, that's not reality. I don't know what's going on there. Now, completely different. 25,000 people in Palestine. I, along with the rest of the world, have borne witness to the world's most documented genocide in history. I've watched from my phone. Oh, I already said that part. Attempted annihilation of an entire nation. These 100 days of genocide have replaced every cell in my body and made me into a different person. I am not the same as I was before witnessing these atrocities. My soul has shifted to revolve around this revolution. I'm not alone. The world has changed right along with me. And that paragraph, I bet it hits home for a lot of you. It hits home for me. I've barely covered anything else since this genocide began. I mean, I'm doing 4 hours of live streams a week, and I'd say 95% of them or 90% are about Israel. But it does. It shifts something major in your soul. And I imagine if you're watching this right now, then you are one of the ones who has felt pretty similarly. To continue from the article, this growing awareness and rage is not only being directed toward Israeli settler colonialism, but the entire Western project as a whole. Rawan Masri, co-founder of Decolonize Palestine, says she's noticed this monumental global shift. I think these 100 days have exposed Israel's genocidal brutality to scores of people for the very first time, and to those already in solidarity with us more than ever before. I think this is the beginning of the end, not only for Israel, but for the Western colonial hegemony that so many of us accepted as a fact of life, but are now seeing in a tangible way that doesn't have to be. Israel is not alone in its destruction of people that it has destroyed, via settler colonialism. Obviously, the United States is a settler colonial project that began with genocide. So much of what the U.S. has done around the world, Latin America, Africa, etc., is combined or part and parcel with settler colonial destruction of people's lives, destruction of their land, their environment, and it's all intertwined. This way of behavior, this way of acting like this is acceptable, this way of propaganda and endorsing this and supporting this, it's all very much tied into one big bundle of a diseased, immoral code that has gotten that way through generations of putting profit and extraction over all else and letting the ruling elite sociopaths dictate the path forward. 100 days of watching a genocide has led to an awakening where we are more aware of our humanity by recognizing that of Palestinians. Something we've seen as people become more spiritual and reflective. And I found that one interesting, that witnessing this genocide against Palestinians has put a lot of people more in touch with their humanity, more in touch with what we should care about in this world, caring about our fellow humans. And many people who maybe haven't thought much about that are now thinking about it. Here's a quote from Iman Sultan, a Pakistani American writer and journalist. They say, I also think the regular cycles and spectacles of capitalist life, whether it's the election, the cult around politics, or celebrity, has effectively been rendered obsolete when the reality is that more than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7th. and those in power have not just enacted, but justified their murders. I was really shocked to see this, to see anybody else talking about this. I mean, I realize I'm not the only one, but you don't hear it much, that seeing something like this, seeing a genocide like this, seeing atrocities like this, seeing war crimes like this, it really does shock you out of the capitalist consumerist world. It shocks you out of that stuff mattering. I for many years have had an ambivalence, being of two minds, of trying to exist within this capitalist world of extraction in one regard, but also being outside of it some of the time, at least in my thoughts. And it's interesting to think that this genocide is actually shocking a lot of people who never had those thoughts out of them, shocking a lot of people out of thinking that their Starbucks Frappuccino is really what matters, and the number of things that they can buy on Amazon it gives life purpose. And it's just really fascinating to see this put so well by a writer, last name Sultan, who, just to reread that, I also think the regular cycles and spectacles of capitalist life, whether it's the election, the cult around politics, or celebrity, has effectively been rendered obsolete. And another thing is, if you were going to spark off a global revolution that evolves humanity beyond this horror show of death and destruction, and both environmental destruction and destruction of our fellow humans, if you were to take something to shock us out of that, it would be something like this. It would be something that is wholly just unimaginably atrocious. That is the type of shock that could get people to see outside of our mundane capitalist lives, consumerist lives. Anyway, to continue from the article, this feeling of widespread rejection has extended in so many areas of our lives. Rejection of the genocide, BDS, the boycott, divest, and sanction, and rejection of those who endorse and support the genocide. The BDS movement that aims to economically and politically pressure Israel to end the occupation has received support like we've never seen before. The article then goes on to detail some of the companies such as Starbucks and McDonald's, who are big players in supporting Israel, supporting this genocide. If you want a longer list of the companies and corporations that support this genocide, I did my first episode for Breakthrough News was actually on that very topic. The video is out now on YouTube. What's the best way to find it? I think if you just go to YouTube and, search Lee Camp Breakthrough News, companies supporting Israel, you'll probably find it pretty quick. Because nowadays I don't know the easiest way to find that link. Anyway, South Africa's suit against Israel in the International Court of Justice at The Hague, which is considered the highest court in the world, directly challenged the Western colonial hegemony. As Nesreen Malik wrote in The Guardian, the trial was not only condemning Israel for its bloody 75-year occupation and current genocide, but challenging the West's pernicious lie that it is the safeguard of morality, logic, and nuance. Yeah. You know that. The U.S. and the West, always, we're the guardians of morality and nuance. When in truth, they are responsible for some of the most barbaric and cruel acts of violence humanity has ever witnessed. Of course, if you guys have seen upwards of 30 seconds of any of my shows, then you know that's the truth. The genocide in Palestine has also led to increased awareness about other ongoing genocides. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, 6 million people have been killed due to Western interference and the cobalt mining industry, cobalt being the resource that powers our technology, including smartphones. And that genocide has been funded mainly by the UAE and the US. With so many people having fresh awareness of these other atrocities, it would be easy to paint a romantic narrative of global solidarity. But we're not quite there yet. and dishonesty gets us no closer. So this article also is not trying to say that, oh, yep, global revolution happening, done, we're there. It is it's obviously slower and more complicated than that. By the way, thank you, Roberto, for sending me the link to my breakthrough news episode. I am putting in the comment thread. Okay, so to continue, this is our great test as humans, and if we fail it, we will cease to exist. This is not hyperbole or spiritual metaphor. It is a scientific fact that colonialism and capitalism are twin evils that are destroying humanity's ability to live on this earth. Hopefully, if you're watching this, then you understand that capitalism is the idea of infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. Therefore, it will always end in collapse. That is where it ends. And we're certainly getting close to it in many regards, not just climate crisis, but also environmental degradation, deforestation, acidification of the oceans, etc. So even if you want to be so willfully ignorant that you think climate crisis isn't happening, we're still destroying the entirety of our ability to exist on this planet via capitalist sociopathy. During the genocide in Gaza alone, Israel's military expelled the same amount of emissions as two of the world's most climate vulnerable nations in 3 months. The stripping of, I think they mean the same amount that they expel in a year. Israel expelled in 3 months. Tough to say. The stripping of resources from the Congo and the same corporations and nations, US and UK, that fund Israel and wage war on Yemen are the world's biggest polluters, killing our chance of human life on this earth just for money. We must throw off the chains that have entrapped not only Palestine, but the whole world. If we allow the most documented genocide in history to happen without consequence, without ending this occupation and freeing our brothers and sisters globally, then we will have lost everything. She knows it will be hard won. This is talking of that author that said that, Masri. She knows it will be hard won and that Israel and other Western countries will commit horrific acts of violence we will never heal from in response to the death of empire. That's the thing about global revolution, to get beyond this death cult, this death spiral that we're in, is as these imperial colonies get cornered and realize the writing on the wall, they're going to act like a cornered tiger and basically kill everybody they can to try and save themselves. But as we're seeing with Israel on Gaza, that it is not working. In fact, it's backfiring. It is really writing the end of Israel faster than it would have happened otherwise. To continue from the article, but I feel peace amidst my indescribable pain because somehow I know that liberation is imminent. For the first time in my life, I can see it, not on the horizon or in some distant future, but here now. I wish not just for my children, but for me. Freedom is here, and we need only reach for it. It has never been so close. My heart will never stop being a grave. I will never heal from what I have seen. I will cry forever. Still, I have never been so full of despair, and I've also never been so full of hope. For the first time, I have faith. Pretty powerful article. Feel free to read the full article by Nyla Burton at Mondoweiss. And it is a beautiful thought amidst such horrific tragedy that perhaps we're seeing a change in the way humanity functions on this goddamn planet. Perhaps we're seeing a shift towards some sort of shared humanity where we consider the death and destruction that's being wrought by such a tiny number of horrific human beings. Anyway, beautiful article and beautiful ideas put out there. All right, I have a lot more for you, including Zelensky's desperate attempt to keep this proxy war going in Ukraine. I also have another rant for you. I think I'm going to start calling these segments "Point Being." which I used to call some of my rants. But I have another one for that over the rights, some of the last remaining rights that Americans are losing. All right. All of that, though, is going to be, and more, is going to be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It is free to watch there as well. You can also watch my locals page. Rumble.com/Lee Camp, free to watch over there, and you will get all those other stories. And I hope when you get over there, you will hit the follow button, hit the bell icon, and just click on the first tab that says something about global revolution. That's the name of the episode, and you can just keep watching. For those of you watching on Rumble right now, nothing changes. And just give me a second to fix things up here. Thank you all for making this show possible. If you want